Do you remember the moment during last CitizenCon when CIG first showed off Maelstrom, the new destruction and damage system? It was pretty amazing not only watching two ships collide and dynamically break apart, but also witnessing a small point of interest get absolutely torn apart by a Gladius. Now, there's a good chance we don't get this system for a long time, but I think there's a lot to be excited about with Maelstrom, specifically how it affects ships and the environments around us. Maelstrom by itself is a really cool feature. Dynamic destruction is a difficult thing to implement, and if CIG can pull it off, it will be really impressive. But despite the cool factors of the system, what does it actually do for the game? Well, let's start off with how it affects ships. I believe as it stands right now, ships have health pools that control whether the ship is functional, soft death, or just straight up exploded. The current system allows for parts of the ship to break off based off of damage on localized parts of the ship, but all of this is pre scripted and rather janky. Though you can target components and parts of the ship, the damage isn't physicalized and is still very dependent on health pools. The current system is also very unforgiving when it comes to colliding with objects or ships, and Maelstrom aims to not only improve much of these systems, but also bring a more cinematic factor to the damage and destruction system overall. Maelstrom might also take away a lot of the frustration that comes with flying and using ships. Let's say, for example, you are low flying on a planet with a Gladius, and you accidentally hit a small tree or rock at the very tip of your wing. With the current system, there is a very high likelihood that you just explode on the spot, despite only a small portion of your wing getting clipped. Theoretically, once we get Maelstrom, exploding on the spot is probably not what's going to occur. Now, yes, there's a good chance your wing dynamically breaks off the ship and your flight controls go absolutely crazy. But not only will the system give you the chance to recover and maybe land safely, you will also have the chance of surviving the crash if you don't manage to recover from the accident. Of course, assuming your ship is intact enough to do so. Maelstrom, generally speaking, will allow small accidents to not always end up in your instant death. It won't just remove you blowing up or dying on impact, but in my opinion, I think it'll give you almost a second chance of survival if you do hit something or you do crash and hit the ground pretty fast. Dogfights will also be changing with the introduction of Maelstrom. Where you hit your target will matter a lot more now since the system is physicalized and doesn't play off of a simple system like health pools. There will be more things to consider for pilots like component failure, overheating, ammo type, fire hazards, and generally what parts of the ship are being broken up and exposed. I think this spices up dogfighting and allows for more dynamic moments. It also might increase your survivability in a scenario where you lose your dogfight. Similar to what we talked about before, with the current system, you are almost certain to explode after the loss of a fight. With Maelstrom, this won't be the same every time. Exploding will only occur under certain parameters and not just when your ship gives out from damage. I personally think these are much needed changes. Dying from random ship explosions and losing tons of time from small accidents has plagued the game experience for way too long. This game should still be punishing, but the damage system we have today just isn't detailed enough for a game like Star Citizen, especially one that aims to make staying alive much more important. Regardless, though, of how you use your ship, Maelstrom will in some way affect your life in the verse, including the environment around you. Based off of what we have seen from CitizenCon, smaller things like cover will get torn apart based off of the damage it takes. This means that in the future, if someone is hiding behind a concrete barrier, you can fire at that barrier to force that person out of cover and into the open. They also demonstrated larger objects being torn up and destroyed by a Gladius. This should theoretically allow for more dynamic encounters at points of interest, and also look pretty badass. Despite what we saw at CitizenCon, there is still a ton that we don't know about this system. Things like what objects will and won't be breakable. Are we going to see buildings in ArcCorp collapse, or is this going to be limited to smaller structures outside of dense areas? One big question is how are they going to handle the persistence aspect of this feature? Will objects actually stay broken or damaged forever, or will we get a magic cleanup of these environments when there are no players around? If I were to give my 2 cents here, I would say that they will always pick the option that makes more sense for the game side of Star Citizen. No, I don't really think massive objects like art court buildings will be toppling over, nor do I really think space stations will be getting blown up in space. As cool as this would look and sound, I'm sure that it would be a nightmare for not only the gameplay side of this game, but the servers and tech as well. Outside of all the exciting possibilities of Maelstrom comes the concerns. Just like all of the great tech innovations with CIG, Maelstrom won't be perfect and suffer from overambition. It is very hard to believe that CIG can create and implement such a detailed destruction and damage model whilst have hundreds of players on those shards. I believe they can figure it out, but I feel as if performance or server health might degrade as soon as this is implemented. Then there comes more gameplay concerns. How do you balance such a system with so many ships and weapons? Will things like salvaging need a refactor around this system? And my personal question, are we actually going to see the system as they advertised it at CitizenCon? Generally speaking, I think they'll answer these questions over time. I think they are things to consider heavily because it's such a depthful system that has a place in so many parts of the verse. But then again, that's why we wait till things like CitizenCon so they can kind of dump that information on us and get us all excited. So we'll see in the future. I do love the idea of Maelstrom. CIG having destruction and damage that games like Battlefield struggle to have is amazing and an incredible accomplishment. Right now, everything feels very dull when it comes to destroying ships, crash landing, and the environments around us. Even things like bunker missions could see nice improvements from Maelstrom, as bunkers are some of the most lifeless areas of the verse. Bunkers feel like they are designed solely for the mission and not for the universe. There is very little to interact with, and everything besides the loot and enemies feels stagnant and still. Though with Maelstrom, maybe we will see these environments take on this model and allow for destruction and damage of cover and objects surrounding these objectives. One thing I really want is more dynamic and interesting crash landings. I don't know why I'm such a big fan of them, but do you just like ever have that moment when you take out a bounty ship and you watch it fall to the planet from thousands of feet up, only to see it bounce and shake a bunch in a really weird and unimmersive manner? It's small things like seeing a ship suffer from real dynamic damage that will add to the immersion of this game. It might not add a ton to the gameplay side, but I certainly think it will look really good and offer more opportunities for anything damage and destruction in the verse. I do want to hear from you though. In the comments, feel free to share how you think this system will play out and what about Maelstrom excites you. To really wrap it up with Maelstrom, I would love to see CIG talk more about this next month at CitizenCon. We really don't know all that much, and many of my ideas of Maelstrom in this video are solely based off of assumptions and the very little information that they have given us about this system. Now, when it comes again to the release of this system slash feature, um, yeah, I have no idea. Like I said at the start of the video, I really have no clue. Chris Roberts said everything that we saw at last CitizenCon was coming at and within the next like 12 months. And of course, there were some outliers to that, like base building and I think crafting. And I'm assuming Maelstrom will be a part of that as well because it is a pretty big feature to get into the game. Though I do think we'll see it before or at 1.0. It's definitely not going to be within the next like few months, in my opinion. Regardless, though, the system is awesome. I think there's the new system right now that we or the new or the system we have in game right now is it needs to be changed. It's pretty janky and frustrating a lot of the time, and I would love to see a just more in-depth system when it comes to damage and destruction. So we'll get that at some point, but we will see when. It'll probably be a very, very long time. Um, Besides all that, I appreciate you watching. Thank you for being here. I've enjoyed, talking about Maelstrom a lot, and it's been something that's been on my mind a lot when it comes to Star Citizen. I wanted to thank you all for just feedback and comments in the last video. There's a lot of discussion, and I really enjoy hearing opposing opinions, similar opinions, and just generally what your idea is for Star Citizen ships and progression in general. I'm sure we'll be talking about that soon on this channel again, but I wanted to thank you for that. Thank you for the support. If you'd like to, feel free to subscribe, like, dislike, whatever you'd like to do, feel free to do that. Any support is really, really appreciated, and it does mean a lot to me. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments about Maelstrom, feel free to let them or leave them down in the comments down below. I have two more videos on this channel about Star Citizen. Feel free to check those out. Besides that, thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.